Side Hustle Elevator. I am the hustler in chief, as I am called by Rex the cat, who's over here, who may make an appearance, may not. And with me today, I have my friend Lindsay Nathanson, who is, she has created something and worked on it over the last almost decade called Sprinkles for Breakfast. And it's her basically baking blog and business, and she teaches courses. So with over 63,000 Instagram followers as of, I think that was last week, and 3.1 million monthly viewers on Pinterest, Lindsay's been able to take a small blog and over the last 8 years transform it into a massive passion project where she gets to do what she loves every single day, which is amazing. And that's to be able to teach people how to become better bakers and find the frosting in everyday life. That's awesome. I in your honor, I baked a flourless chocolate pecan cake this morning.
Oh,
so we'll
efficient this morning. Already on it, baking a cake.
Went to the gym, went to the grocery store, baked a cake.
I have not done any of those. I fed my dog and took them out and ate some breakfast.
Well, I've probably had more sugar than you have today. So how's it going?
It's good. Things are good.
Good. So tell us how you and I have talked once or twice, and I was very impressed by not only what you've done, but what you've done it with, because I love baking and donuts and cakes and cookies, and
all the good stuff.
The fact that you've made this business out of it is just awesome to me. So tell us how you got started. And you and I have talked about your story. Feel free to include as much or as little as you like.
Okay. Well, the blog actually started as a final for a photography class. So the assignment was to show pictures of things that you love. And I have been baking since I was about 14 years old. Love baking. So I thought, great, we'll shoot some baked goods. And I presented it in this blog format. And, it was just a project. Thought nothing of it. The class really liked it. And then my friend and roommate was like, you should just probably keep doing it. And I was like, okay. And now here we are 8 years later, and I'm still doing it and running it as a business. So it's been a crazy ride, but that's how it all got started.
That's awesome. And it's been a long 8 years. I know you've been through a lot. Is this your full-time business?
Yes, it is officially my full-time jobs for the last 2.5 years now.
Okay. And we'll go into that 2.5 years. By the way, if you see me typing, I'm taking notes. Full time. So it was kind of a side project, a side hustle.
Yes.
For a while.
Hobby to side hustle to full time.
Okay. So while that was sort of ramping up, what jobs paid your bills, and what helped you build this up financially?
I did a lot of side jobs. I was getting up at 3 a.m. and going into a bakery to bake. I was walking dogs. I was ghostwriting for other blogs. And there was also, which is my least favorite job, was a support person for Twitter. So people would email in complaining about something. I'm like, I would have to try to help them fix it, which was not my favorite.
So were you actually?
My advice was turn off your phone. And turn off your phone.
That's good advice in general sometimes.
Yeah.
So you were actually working for Twitter?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like Periscope, which was a small live streaming app that got bought by Twitter. So then
yeah, I remember Periscope. So a lot of what, aside from walking dogs, maybe a lot of what you were doing kind of was laying a foundation for where you were going. It was helping you learn different elements of starting a digital business, and that's cool.
It was kind of like a stepping stone, a learning.
Cool. So let's kind of run through this continuously chronologically. So you have been baking since you were 14, and then you started this for a kind of a class project, and it kept going. And so sort of talk about the evolution of it and where you decided to start building courses and where you saw the biggest leaps as far as, you start a blog, nobody's looking at it. And
Right.
you start an Instagram account or a Pinterest account, nobody's looking at it. So talk about some kind of those quantum leaps of, what got bigger and when, and why do you think that is?
So the first thing that I figured out was that my photography needed to improve. So I was taking very bad photos of my recipes, and I was in a photography class, as that's why I did the final project. So I had taken photos of other things, but food photography was a totally different beast.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just a very different thing than like taking photos of people, which is what I had been doing. So I really had to learn and teach myself food photography. And once the photos started getting better, the pins started going up, the people on Instagram started coming, like the better my pictures were, the more exposure and the more my audience grew. So that is by far the biggest thing.
Okay, let's stop there. What were some ways you taught yourself? And as your pictures were getting better, what were you doing to get them out there?
So Pinterest and Instagram were my main sources of like getting my stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of teaching myself, I read a lot of books and a lot of blogs, and I did a lot of trial and error. When I started 8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information out there about like shooting good food photos like at home. It was all about like a studio and like, this like studio lighting and stuff. And like I just do it in my kitchen,
Yeah.
window. So there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of figuring stuff out, and just a lot of practice. And that's actually what started the courses, right? So I saw this need that like if I was starting 8 years ago and I had to like, it took me years and years and years to be able to get a good photo. So the courses actually teach bakers how to take better photos of their baked goods. So
Okay. So let's go back to the main timeline. When did you start implementing courses?
The courses are so 2018 was my first course.
Oh, okay. So the last couple of years.
2020. Yeah. So it's a very new thing. It's something I had wanted to be doing. And it took me a little while to like, one, get the confidence to like charge people for a course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And two, like figure out the right platforms to do and exactly how I wanted to do it.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of the tools you use later. But that's interesting about the confidence piece because you had to hit a lot of stepping stones. One was actually putting your stuff out there when you were first starting your recipes, and then it was putting them, having to sound like an authority as a baker. Where did that confidence come from?
I think I was just in the beginning, I was doing it for me, right? I was just like, it was something I liked doing and I was putting it out. And I thought like my family was reading it maybe, and like the few friends who pretended that they cared and like, and they were being nice and supporting me. But I remember I was living in New York City and I had run into somebody that I went to college with who was like a friend of a friend, like not somebody who I was close friends with. And because I was putting the blog on my Facebook, they were like, "Oh, I read your blog," and I was like, why did you do that?" Like, so weird. So things like that started, like more and more people were reading, and I just kind of like kept going. The baking, just like word vomiting onto a page there was no problem and for confidence there because it was just like, I was just doing it. It was more when it got into monetization that it became a confidence thing. So going from just like a little hobby and like, this is me and what I do, to like, oh my God, this is a business and I'm charging people to do things for me to take photos. Like that's when the confidence, I think, became like a little bit of a roadblock.
And what was it that pushed you over that block? Did you have mentors you were working with? Was it just I'm going to do this and see what happens?
Yeah.
Just internal?
So my mom died of cancer about 5 years ago.
Right.
And when she died, I, had been working on the blog, and it was something I think I had gotten like one paid thing by then. And I decided when she died that life is short and it's can change in a second. And
Yeah.
I did not want to spend my life doing something that I didn't love doing, and that I didn't want to look back and be like, oh, I'll do that in a couple years, or oh, I'll do that eventually. Like, I was just like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And I realized that if I was going to do it, I needed to make money. Like,
Yeah.
that's the reality. While I would love to just exchange fake goods for, everything in my life, you have to make money to be able to run a business. So it was
Yeah.
definitely a steep learning curve for me, on how to get there. But, it was just the determination of like, this is what I want to do, and this is what I have to do to make it happen.
That's awesome. And that is, forgive the pun, but that is a bittersweet sense of motivation that is coming from this tragic event in your life, but has resulted in something that's very aligned with who you are and your purpose. And
Yeah, no, it's a really strange thing that like the worst thing that's ever happened in my life has gotten me my dream job. It's one of those like weird things, but like I'm just rolling with it and
yeah,
trying to make the best of, a situation that was not
yeah.
ideal for anyone.
Okay. So it was a couple of years ago that the courses started showing up.
Mhm.
And how there's sometimes a turning point with an audience that you've built up, where if you start injecting ads or asking people to pay for things,
Mhm.
there's some blowback. So did you experience that? And if so, how did you handle that?
Um, I think I've seen other people like just do ads all the time, like on
Hmm.
Instagram, and I'm just like, this is annoying. Like,
Yeah.
I understand it because I am on the other side of it. And like, I know they're doing it to make money, but like, just to have all of your content be ads felt like something that I didn't want to do. And that's when the courses came in. I would much rather, um, I decided that I would much rather make money providing people with like a course or something than make my money all the time and feeling like I have to like do all of these ads all the time to be able to
Yeah.
pay my bills. So I wanted to find another way. And I've always been interested in teaching. I started like being a teacher's assistant when I was like in middle school. So through college, I worked at elementary school. I mean, mostly I've worked with little kids, but I have loved teaching. So it was something I was comfortable doing. It was something I know I liked doing. And it just kind of, because I had spent so long trying to figure out the food photography thing on my own, I knew that there was a need for it. And people would ask me on Instagram, like, how do you get these pictures? Like, I would sometimes like do stories of my setup, which was like literally just my kitchen. When people would come to my house and watch me do a photo shoot, like they were always like so shocked that it was just me on my kitchen table, like half of my kitchen table, um, that is getting these pictures. So I knew that there was a need out there. And that's when I kind of shifted to, um, the courses. So there was no blowback. I think I just more expanded on my audience.
Okay. And you were listening to what it was they wanted,
Yeah.
which everybody says to do. And that's very helpful. Let's go back a step. You said you were putting ads on Instagram. Are you talking about like affiliate products, or what were you
Yeah. So
actually?
sponsored posts is one of the ways that I make money. So something like I did a whole bunch of stuff with International Delight. So I would make recipes with International Delight's different flavors, and then that would be a sponsored post. So like with Instagram, you have to, make it known that this was a paid thing, and ads, then put the ad hashtag or sponsored hashtag in there. So that's what I'm.
Oh, okay. So you were basically endorsing certain products
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram to make money from it.
Yeah.
And how, I mean, aside from sort of the semi conflict, the things that people can run into with, that's not the right Aside from the blowback,
Mhm.
were you making decent money doing that?
Yeah, so I was able to make enough money that I could quit my jobs to go full
Wow.
time. But the problem with that world is that, like, you do one sponsored post and then like the next month you have to go out and hustle and like find more. So
Yeah.
like there's always this like rat race of like trying to find the next thing. The that like sponsored post world is changing and people are more leaning now towards longer partnerships where like it feels not only more authentic but just like it makes more sense to like have this continued partnership rather than just in the beginning it was all one-off things.
Yeah.
So that I like much better. I feel like it's more authentic for the audience, not like just like I'm doing this for the cash and
Yeah.
in and out. But in the beginning, it was definitely just one-off things. These businesses and companies were trying to figure out what worked and what didn't for social media marketing. So they were just doing these one-off things. So it was like always the rat race of trying to find every month, start over to see if I could like pay my bills that month. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, is that something you would recommend or do recommend to people who are getting into this? I mean, do you still like that or do you feel like it's not the best way to go?
no, I think absolutely it's something a good way for people who are just starting and like I think you have to start somewhere, right? So if you want to eventually work with these like bigger companies, you have to start somewhere and like show that you're able to work well with other companies and like what you can produce.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's a good place to start. And there's lots of platforms that connect you with businesses and people who can create content. So there's definitely a market out there. There's definitely a lot of money to be made in that space. It's just, you know, the fine line of feeling authentic to like feeling like you're selling out.
Yeah.
It's
Understood.
a fine line to walk.
And that's something you kind of have to gauge yourself and
And the
maybe,
audience as well. Like if
yeah.
if you're doing a post and your sponsored content gets, a tenth of what you're usually getting, that it's not feeling authentic to them. So you got to change your wording or like how you're presenting it, or like your audience is just like, we hate this.
So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is something that a lot of people wonder about. So you mentioned platforms that you can use
Mhm.
to connect with these sponsors.
Yeah.
How would somebody listening go about finding that?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what my favorite are. There's so many out there and they're changing all the time. Just like
Hmm.
literally Googling like sponsored posts, like or like content creator platforms. Um, Popular Pays is an app that I use, which is great. I'm trying to,
Popular Pays, Pays.
yeah, so that's the one
Okay.
that I use a lot in the beginning, and now I mostly get people who are reaching out to me directly, or in reverse, I reach out to people that I want to work with. But something like Popular Pace is great. In the beginning, you get to see all the different ads that people are looking for, and you pitch a idea, and you either get it
Okay.
or don't.
Cool.
Yeah,
So, like anything else, you do the legwork as you're building up, but as you get bigger, they start approaching you a little
right.
more.
Or you start reaching out to them, which I was always scared of doing, but you gotta do it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's talk about your courses. You have, how many do you have now that are active?
There is one main course, and it's a 4-week boot camp, food photography
Mhm.
boot camp.
Okay.
Like there's little ones that you can buy, but it's all in that main course.
Okay. So, okay. And so I know that's changed a little bit over time. Is that correct? That you had smaller ones?
Um, it's gotten bigger, yeah,
Oh, okay.
but yeah. So
It's always been the one main course?
yeah,
Okay. Um, so there's also, well, I saw there was a smartphone course on your site.
That one is in the works. So hopefully this year we're looking to do a smartphone course, which is just
Mhm.
based on how to take the best photos with your smartphone. But actually, I would say half the people who take my regular 4-week course are just using their phones.
Okay.
So what's so great about the course is that it's a beginner course and you can really start from just taking photos with your phone. Um,
Hmm.
and then in this new year, we're working on the smartphone course, which goes into more detail on just how to use. It's really mostly for iPhone users because it tells you how to use the features in the iPhone.
Okay.
And then an advanced course as well, where it'll take, after they graduate from the 4-week course, it'll be like a much more intense advanced course than like just starting in food photography.
Okay. Cool. So it says on there that it's waitlisted. Are you, or there is a wait list?
So the wait list is just because I only do it certain times of the year. So
Hmm.
I have like we have next week we're doing webinars and then the courses will start the first week in February. So it's the wait list is just for people who want to get in on the next round of courses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's and then it's, there's an open and a close, right? Where
Mhm.
at that point you're done. So is this, tell us the thinking. I know this is a time-tested technique, but tell us the thinking behind that versus leaving it open all the time.
So the way that I sell the course is usually I do a free webinar. So I do an hour webinar where I teach people, how to take good food photos. And then if they want to learn more, they can buy the 4-week course. So that's how it works. So the webinar is where I get all these people coming in
Hmm.
that are interested in it. So instead of just leaving the course open, it's a 4-week course because it's like a class. Like they have like every Monday they get a new unit for 4 weeks. They post their homework. Like I'm commenting on their homework. So it just makes it easier and feel like more of like these people are all in this class together than just like randomly people taking it throughout the year. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. So it would, do you feel like this was kind of a, is it a bandwidth reason that you open and close it, that you only have so many people you can help at a time? Or was it an approach to using scarcity to get more signups?
No, definitely
Okay.
not scarcity. It's about like giving these people in this class the best um, material and like support that they can get
Mhm.
in that time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it really is truly about how you can best serve
Yeah.
your clients and customers.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. So for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what scarcity is, it is basically the notion of there is only so much of something, or there is only a certain amount of time before something goes away, and that creates more desire to have it. And there are a lot of marketers. Lindsay is really great at balancing this line. And I would argue you're more on the side of giving value over everything. But there are marketers out there who use these as techniques, for better or for worse, to entice people to take action. And it's not, the dark side of the force all the time. It's I mean, have you encountered marketers who do that?
Yeah, so I think it's something I work with somebody who helps me market like and does the back end because I'm
Hmm.
data technology, which like I work on the internet. It's a weird thing, but um, so we talked about that, and I think that there maybe is a little bit of sense of scarcity and urgency, and that like it only happens so many times a year.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe there's a little bit of that, but for me, I wanted it to be as many, like I wanted to be able to have as many people take this course as possible. And I felt like if I said like only 10 spots left and there was like more people in the Facebook group or, I just didn't want to like lie to people. Like, I don't know. It felt weird to me. And
Yeah.
so I decided that just to be totally like everyone can come. So.
So if somebody, and I know you're teaching this, but you are doing what you're doing. If somebody wanted to start a course, let's say,
Mhm.
and they don't feel like they're at a point to do that, what would you recommend?
If they want to start a course, but you gotta start somewhere. So maybe, doing a 1 hour free webinar, which is a great way to get people interested and involved. But for the first course, I would say just start with a lower price point, like a pretty low price point, and that's what I did. And then it went up, and like I just saw what worked and what didn't.
Mm,
At first I was doing all my courses live to figure out, what worked, what didn't, what people were understanding, and what people are like, wait a minute, we have no idea what you're talking about. So after that, now they're all recorded and like I have the stuff planned out. So I think you just kind of have to like go with it.
start small, feel it out,
Yeah.
put things out there, see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So you've been doing this over time. You've been studying all these different aspects of digital commerce and marketing. So let's talk about your funnel
Okay.
and how this is structured. So a marketing funnel obviously is where you get a lot of potential people to come into the top of the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
They consume your free stuff or your low cost stuff. And as they go down the funnel, they hopefully will get to the end where they buy your big course and maybe an upsell or two. And then you continue to market to them over time. So that's a typical funnel. What does yours look like?
Yeah, so that's where the webinar comes in. So the top of the funnel is people just registering for this free course. So
Mhm.
that's where they start. We get the emails that come in. And then as you go down, like they get a bunch of emails reminding them about the webinar. Then they either show up or don't show up to the webinar. And then you go through and try to sell them
Mhm.
the course. So that's kind of how the funnel works
Okay.
in my structure.
Okay. And do you have any upsells that you are pushing once people have signed up
So
or
we
bumps?
are implementing an upsell this year. We're offering like a VIP um, section where actually, speaking of scarcity, we are only going to do 15 this time because I just want to. It's one of those things where this is a new thing and I want to see what works and what doesn't work. So it's
Hmm.
not about like only 15 of you like come on in. Like it's like I just want to make sure that the 15 are getting what
Yeah.
is good
Yeah.
to see what works and what doesn't. Like I said, so that will be like the upsell in
Okay.
this round.
Cool.
Yeah.
And have you played with different pricing structures just to see what would work?
Yeah. So, like I said, I started pretty low and then I kind
Mhm.
of went up, a little bit and a little bit more. And I think we've kind of landed on like a good price.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for your audience, you've seen that that works well with what they want, what they're willing to spend?
Yeah. So far,
Cool.
I mean, we do offer refunds and every once in a while we do get refund requests, but
Yeah.
for the most part, everyone is very happy with what they've
It's
got.
probably Martha Stewart and Rachel Ray. They're all wanting refunds.
Right.
So have you, I mean, you've gotten to know your audience pretty well. Have you gone through a process of actually writing down who your avatar is and understanding on paper who it is you're marketing to and what their needs and assets and
So since I started, my avatar and audience, I think, has changed. So it's something
Mhm.
that I'm constantly having to check back in with. So like in the beginning, like I said, I was just like putting out what I wanted to put out, right? Like it was just like, this is what I like. Here you go. So and then in over time, I realized that I need to be really creating content for the people consuming it, not just like what I liked.
Yeah.
And it started with like female, like younger bakers who were just starting out, like wanted these simple recipes, and like it like grew eventually now into these people who are maybe a little bit more advanced bakers who are making these beautiful baked goods who don't know how to take photos of them. So
Mm.
for me, it was like it's always been about constantly checking in with my audience and seeing like what they want and what they don't want, interacting with them, and then being able to take those answers and that interaction and like be able to create content for what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So let's
checking down, maybe no, but like I am always constantly checking in on it.
So even if it's not on paper or on the computer, you're kind of continually rounding that out in your head, who that person is or people, and being able to market to them. Okay. What's more fun to you, the marketing part of it, or I mean, you do so many things in this business. What do you enjoy the most?
The baking.
If you could do it, if you could be making a living baking full time instead of doing the digital side, would you do it?
No, because that entails like either a bakery, which like I like to be able to bake what I want when I want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's like the whole thing encompasses like I love taking the photos, but the baking is like really where my heart and soul like is. So sometimes I find myself like getting a little frustrated like when I'm on the computer all day trying to figure out like stuff for the courses, and I'm just like I just want to bake cookies. But that's why I like enlisted like this help, like the girl who's helping me with the marketing. It's something that I was very bad at, and
Yeah.
she's been like a game changer for me, and like it's been so amazing. So like I think it was about like, you know, instead of me trying to teach myself, which like I did on my website, I tried to like be a graphic designer and like it was awful. And then I just like paid someone $200 and it was like so much better. So I spent like, it's about like knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then like finding help from people
Yeah.
who are.
Well, let's talk about that. Your branding is done really well. I mean, between the colors and the verbiage is just fun and light, and it's personable. It doesn't feel like it came from a template or anything. How much of that is you? How much of it is you working with a professional? I mean, there's so much of what seems like you on your website and your materials.
Yeah, that's all me. It's all that is something I think actually Instagram was a great way in the beginning when I was trying to figure out what my brand was, because
Mm-hmm.
Instagram was such a visual platform. I would like take photos of Christmas themed baked goods and use like these red and green, and like it just like wouldn't fit in with the pastel that I
Yeah.
was really doing. So actually Instagram was a great way for me to be able to like hone in what the brand was, what sprinkles for breakfast was. I wanted people to be able to recognize something and be like, oh, that's obviously sprinkles for breakfast. So it was something that developed over time, but it was, you know, all of that stuff has come from me.
Yeah.
The marketing is more like the emails and like, you know, how many emails to send and when to send them and all of that stuff, which I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to annoy them. Like, just, you know, and she's like, no, they have to see it this many times. And I'm like, okay.
It's a fine line for sure.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the tools that you use.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that from social media. Let's start there. It's Pinterest,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
What are you using are you using post scheduling services and that kind of thing?
So Pinterest, I use Tailwind,
Okay.
which is amazing. And it makes my life so much easier. You can like pin multiple things at a time rather than like, you know, and schedule them out. Rather with Pinterest, you have to like do one at a time. So Tailwind is great.
They have a lot of great educational resources too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're an amazing company.
Yeah.
And they have an Instagram section as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I use Planoly for my Instagram scheduling.
What is it?
Planoly, Planoly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm putting all this down so we can put it in the resources section when I put this into the blog post. So people can go to it. All right. So that's social media. Let's talk about marketing.
So I use Kartra. I use Webinar Jam for the webinar itself, and it actually links up with Kartra. And Kartra is great because you can do one, it connects with Webinar Jam. It does all of your emails as well, and you can set up a membership site. So I can do everything I need with the course all on Kartra.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Spent a long time looking for Kartra. I use it too. That's actually how we met, was over Kartra, and I spent a long time looking for a platform like that. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. And as far as photography, what are you using?
So I use a Nikon D750, but you can use your phone. Like these days, the cameras on your phone are so good that you can get good photos. But a DSLR camera, like if you're going to do it professionally, like probably it's a good idea. And I'm like a Nikon girl. I've always been a Nikon.
What's that?
I've always been a Nikon person. So,
versus Canon, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. So if somebody wanted to start with their phone camera, they want to take your course, let's talk about how they find it.
You mean the phone course or the regular course?
Both.
So that's a great question. We're working on having it more visible on the website, but it is on the website. That's where you would find it.
Okay. And so the website, which is currently featured at the bottom of our screen, if you're not watching and just listening, tell us what how to find it on the internet.
www.sprinklesforbreakfast.com.
Okay, good.
And there's a whole Sprinkle Academy section that has all the courses and ebooks and all that on there.
Okay, cool. Any other, that was just a spontaneous plug for your stuff. We'll do that again before the end of the conversation. So what's that?
I love it. Great.
Yeah. So before we move on, any other tools that you use that you like?
Those are the main ones I use, I think.
Okay.
Snapseed I use for editing on my phone. It's my favorite, like, photo editing app.
What was it?
Snapseed, Snapseed.
Okay. Yeah. Do you ever use your phone these days for editing?
Yes. If I use Snapseed a lot, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But for my phone, for taking photos, especially if I'm like out or on vacation, I don't want to bring my DSLR camera. I absolutely use my phone to take photos.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is that if somebody wants to start their own blog and have photography, they don't need to go spend $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 on a high-end camera and editing software. What do you think it would cost if somebody wanted to start today with as small of a budget as they could? What would that be, and what would you recommend?
So in the class, I give an ebook called The DIY Home Studio, and it's like everything that you need to set up a studio home, and it's under $100.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't include like a DSLR camera. That includes like a phone or, if you already have a camera, but everything else is under $100.
That's great.
Yeah.
Which people can find again at, we'll throw that back up there, sprinklesforbreakfast.com. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about networking. Okay. How do you approach networking, and where do you find people to network, whether it's other bloggers or bakers or marketers? Do you go to conferences? I mean, how do you?
I go to a lot of like workshops and like day events, and I usually am going by myself. And so over the years, I've come up with this thing where once I'm there, I have a goal to introduce myself to 5 people.
Okay.
So instead of like it having be this overwhelming, oh my God, there's so many people here and I don't know any of them, I just like make a goal to like meet 5 people, and that has worked really well for me. Some of them you never talk to again, but sometimes you meet somebody and then they connect you with somebody, like, it's a really great tool to use when you're in those kind of situations. And Instagram is also a great way to connect with people. I am co-teaching a course with somebody that I met through Instagram. So, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I also have a couple of times just emailed people that I like respected or had a question for. So it's just about putting yourself out there and like, connecting when you can.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that 5 people thing
Yeah.
because I would imagine there's kind of a secret in that because it's not just meeting 5 people, it's starting the inertia and the momentum of, oh, I've talked to 5 people, I might as well talk to 5 more.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. It just makes it like a tangible goal that you can like mentally, I can be like, okay, I can introduce myself to 5 people,
yeah,
right? That's a small number. I can do it. And it's been really great for me. Sometimes I just introduce myself to 5 people at an event and I end up talking to one for, the whole time. Or like I said, like I start with 5 and then it just keeps going from there. So it's been
cool.
a great thing for me.
Do you consider yourself more of an introvert or an extrovert when it comes to that kind of thing?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I have qualities of both.
Mm-hmm.
But the 5 people rule forces me to be like the full extrovert that
Yeah.
you need to be in those situations,
Yeah.
at
Okay.
least in those 5 interactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough when you're in a completely new environment. You don't know anybody.
Yeah.
You have to, there's no leverage there. There's nobody to.
Yeah. And I think
talk to.
the thing that comforts me is that there's a lot of people who are in the same exact situation in those conferences. And like most people are more than happy to talk to you when you go up and introduce yourself. So.
Cool. Do you have this sounds corny, but like an opening line or something that you start, or is it situational?
Yeah, it's more situational.
Okay.
Yeah, because it depends on like, you can ask what they do, like if it's a conference with but if it's a bunch of photographers, like what they do. So it just depends, I think, on
I'm picturing that. Like, what do you do? I'm a
yeah.
photographer.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, do what he does.
Yeah, we're all photographers here.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, this has been fantastic. We actually have covered a lot of ground. It's been very content focused. So let's talk a little fun stuff. What first of all, what kept you focused and disciplined and optimistic aside from the event with your mom?
I think that's probably the biggest factor in like staying driven. I'm also really stubborn. So I decided that this is what I wanted to do. There's people who told me to go get a real job or like, it was too isolating and I needed to be around more people or like, what are you doing? And I was just like, sorry, this is what I'm doing. Like I just was so passionate about it and I knew it could work and I was so believed in it that like I just kept going.
And at the points where it looked like it wasn't going to work, did you have an escape hatch?
Yes.
Huh?
Meltdowns? Yes.
Did you ever say, I'm going to quit if something doesn't happen? Or is it just, this is going to work?
I did.
None at all.
So the first year that I was making money, I set a goal, like if I can make $10,000 from this blog this year, I'll keep going. I think I made like $10,500. So I was like pretty close, but I did it. And then that, like, ever since, my dog is really wanting to come in. Can you hear her?
We have if you're watching and listening, we had a conversation before we went live here that my cats typically make an appearance before the end of an interview. Aw. And that her dog wanted to come. She locked him out. So who is this?
This is Olive.
Aw.
Yeah, she's the best assistant for Sprinkles for Breakfast, always cleaning up the floor whenever I drop my nothing. So she eats a lot of sprinkles. But yes, this is
Oh.
Olive. But what were we saying?
Oh, you were talking about making a $10,000 goal and then
Yeah.
exceeding it, and so
Right.
there was never really a point where you said, "I don't think this is going to work," or "I'm giving up after this point." It was more of setting goals.
Yeah. The first webinar I did was a big failure. That
Mhm.
was a rough one for me. Full meltdown. I had all these like ideas in my head that I would have, this many people come and all of that. And I think I had less than 40 people come to the first one. And I was just like besides myself.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, but like my dad was actually very helpful in that and was like, we're gonna, spend a little money on marketing and then we'll see what happens. And so once because I was like, what do you mean I'm gonna spend money before I make money? Like that to me is like no, but that's how it works with marketing. And so
Yeah,
it ended up being much better the second.
that's cool. So I haven't heard you talk about your dad yet. What role has he played in this whole process?
So my dad is kind of like a business consultant. Um, and he's just been really helpful in like answering questions and being a sounding board for me. So he, especially in these creating these courses, he has been really helpful in like setting setting goals for what we're spending and how many. Yeah, can you say hi? For setting goals for like what I need to spend and how many people I should be getting with that spending and like just putting out like a marketing plan.
Cool.
Which, for me with like because I don't like money, I was just like so overwhelmed by it. So that was really helpful.
And what platforms did you use? Was it Facebook ads? Was
It
it
was all Facebook ads.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk fun stuff.
Okay.
What's your number one, if you had to pick one, and I know it's like picking one of your children here, but if you had to pick one recipe, what is your favorite recipe of all time that you've made?
Okay. So if I had to pick one, it would be jumbles. It is something that I made up in high school, and it's like this white chocolate caramel oatmeal bar.
Mm,
They're super easy to make, and they're so good and addicting, and they're definitely like a crowd pleaser. Like I have people all the time who are like, I don't like white chocolate, like I don't like caramel, and I'm like, just eat it. And they're like, okay, this I like. So yeah,
awesome. Good. So if somebody goes to sprinklesforbreakfast.com and looks for it, you went on a donut tour,
yes.
which is amazing. One of the coolest things anybody has ever done in the entire history of the planet. So, and you can go through each city. Number one, did you have a number one place in that you went to, or are they all great?
I think I had a top 3.
Okay.
So the Donut Vault in Chicago, and then Sidecar Donuts in Orange County. There's one in LA, but I think the one in Orange County is better. And then there's one called the Donut Hole in Portland, Maine, which they use like potatoes in their donuts to make them super soft and moist.
Mm.
So those are, I think, top 3. They're all like very different types of donuts, but
Okay. That's going on my where I need to go before the end of the year list.
yeah.
What else is coming up? Do you have anything else like that just
So
for fun?
the donut tour took us 2 years to finish, so
Yeah.
it's a long process. So we're trying to figure out, with scheduling, like when we can do the next food tour. I think ice cream is on the list for
Very
being
nice.
the next food tour, but it's still definitely in the works.
Okay. Awesome.
My friend and I did it together, and she like just got married and like just got a new house, so she has like real adult life things to deal with. And I'm just like,
Cool.
come eat donuts with me.
That'll help just about any problem.
Yeah.
So, what is the best dessert for a tough day?
For a tough day. On tough days, I make chocolate chip cookies. They're easy to make, and I just find that like there's not much that a warm chocolate chip cookie like can't fix.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably my go-to for a tough day.
Okay. What's the best dessert for a great day?
You mean like a celebration day?
Yeah.
So my favorite, like my grandma once asked me what I would make for the Queen of England if she came to eat at my house, which she shouldn't do that. There's much nicer houses to eat at. But it's something called a butter cake. It's like the most amazing heaven thing ever.
That's awesome.
That's probably what I would say.
You probably could get Meghan Markle to come over
Yeah,
now.
well, she's in Canada now, so may have to. We can get her to come down
Yeah,
probably.
she's
But
closer than the Queen, would be
yeah,
my guess.
it's true.
All right. So let's talk about next steps for, and we did cover this already, but for anybody who wants to learn more about you or about Sprinkles for Breakfast or any of your courses, tell us where to go and what to do.
You go to sprinklesforbreakfast.com, and there is a section if you want to learn about the courses called the Sprinkle Academy, and that will give you all the information you need on there.
Great. And there's more information about you on there as well.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, anything else you want to add before we close up shop here?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
You're very welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Olive be.
We'll put Olive's nameplate back up. Oh, and one more question. How often do you have sprinkles for breakfast?
More than I would like.
More than you should. All right, guys, you've been listening to Lindsay Nathanson from sprinklesforbreakfast.com. My name is Benjamin Portnoy. I am the hustler in chief of Side Hustle Elevator, where you can get support tools, training, and community for making more money and passive income through fun and fulfilling side jobs. And to learn more about what we do, how we can help you, go to sidehustleelevator.com. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. It's on Google Play and the iTunes Store, and most recently on Spotify. So also go to the YouTube channel. You can subscribe and get a notification every time one of these YouTube lives comes out. So with that, we're going to say goodbye. And Lindsay, thanks again. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Talk to you soon.